Tommy, mate, the vibes are high. We finally got the multi up. Probably the biggest win in the history of this show, I'd have to say. Nice little $16. We'll get into that later. Plenty of betting and plenty of stats to talk about this week. Obviously, it's gather round, so I just want to get your thoughts. I'm hoping you can inform the punters on what it was like to play at Adelaide Oval. Not many people could attest to that ground, and you know it better than most. First of all, is it different playing there compared to grounds like the SCG or the Gabba? Do you have to adjust as a player there?
Yeah, it's certainly different with the hill atmosphere as well. Clearly the stadium's built differently, different size ground, etc. like that. It's a great venue to play footy at.
Yep.
The crowd's involved the whole time, and particularly as a Port Adelaide player, we know how that the pre-game entertainment, etc. like that, Never Tear Us Apart gets played. So it was always special to play at Adelaide Oval, and it's just a great atmosphere around the whole ground. Unique, clearly, with that hill, as I touched on, but the crowd's so involved, it's so loud there, and the ground level itself, it's just such a great surface.
Do you think Adelaide Oval sort of lends itself to lower scoring games? Because I had a look at the average total score there combined is only 165.5 points dating back to 2013. So any value for the punters maybe wanting to back the under this week?
Potentially, maybe conditions wise, if it gets a little bit wet and slippery, potentially a bit more in Adelaide. But it seems a bit funny. Maybe day games. It'd be interesting to see day versus night whether the scoring would be impacted. Because recall Port Adelaide, some games they put heavy scores on really fast as well. I think back to a couple of years ago when they took on Hawthorn, and might have even been last year, and they were nearly 100 at half time. I don't think there's a great deal in that. It might be a little bit of wet conditions at night. Port Adelaide's inaccuracy of late's probably cost them some higher scoring, and the Adelaide Crows not performing as well over the last sort of five or so years. So maybe there's an element of that to it, but that's an interesting stat that the average is a bit lower.
It's one to keep in the back pocket, and it was very wet in gather round last year, if I recall. Talking about a team that we have spoken about a fair bit already in this segment, St Kilda last week came off second best to the Bombers in a game they probably should have won. Lost by 4 points in that one. Real tale of two halves. We saw that stingy kind of St Kilda defense in the first half really made ball movement tough for the Bombers, but then the pressure just kind of fell away in that second half. Jake Stringer does what Jake Stringer can do sometimes. Worth noting this week, they are playing at Norwood Oval. They take on a Tigers team that's really up and about after knocking off the Swans last week, and they look very dangerous despite what's going on with their forward line. Back to St Kilda though, which version of this team do you think we can trust? The tight, stingy one, or the one that's just can't play four quarters?
Yeah, I think you would like to think that the tight, stingy team, the first two performances of the season were really good. They probably should have beaten Geelong round one, but then they were so disappointing on the weekend. You'd expect them to beat Essendon, particularly in the position they were. So they're a hard one to catch, and they've got a tough game. Richmond surprised everyone. I thought Sydney and the Giants are probably the team to beat this year, and they were able to get the job done. We know that was at the MCG. Norwood Oval, small, contested ground, probably a lot easier to defend than Adelaide Oval, so it probably suits them a little bit. They obviously haven't got the great record there. At Adelaide Oval, this ground's a lot tighter, so I'd imagine they will defend it a lot better. So I'd be leaning towards backing St Kilda, but again, as you said, you just can't have any faith in them at the moment until we see it consistently over a longer period of time. We're just up in the air about them. I
was very confident in them about last week, and they've let me down already. I'm starting to change my tune because this is the St Kilda that we've come to know and hate, especially when you're trying to have a bet on them. Let's talk Carlton though. Surprisingly, they're winless in 7 games at the Adelaide Oval. Came off second best to the Crows last year, got absolutely belted, 118-62. Last week, look, they did have their struggles against North early on. It was a bit touch and go, but the second half was all Carlton, 56-point winners in the end. Mackay and Curnow combined to kick 9, top 5 team in points, tackles, inside 50s, all the important stuff. This week, it's the clash of the unbeatens against Fremantle on Saturday afternoon. They beat them pretty handily in round 17 last year, 53-point winners, led by 24 at the end of the first quarter, then kicked 8 unanswered goals late in that game. Look, do you think we're going to see the same kind of thing emerge this time around? Because last time they met, basically Carlton's midfield was too strong, bigger bodies, and then of course they have the advantage up forward? Or do you think we've seen enough from Fremantle where we could see a bit of an upset?
Fremantle have probably been the most impressive. I sort of had Longmuir in all sorts of trouble before the season started, and they've been able to win their first 3 games. It's going to be a midfield battle again, and Fremantle are going just as good there. Sarong, Brayshaw, these guys through there absolutely playing some of their best footy of their careers. So, but Carlton on the flip side have a really strong midfield as well. So if they can get up and about, I think they'll be really hard to beat. And then their forward line's just going to stretch. The Freo defence, unfortunately, we know they've got their troubles there, a couple of injuries for the Dockers. So I'd be pretty keen on Carlton to get the job done and hand Freo their first loss. But as you said, it's a hoodoo ground. So until they break that, it certainly plays on your mind because the pressure builds. It'll be spoken about probably more so externally this week than internally, but they need to get a win at Adelaide Oval just to get that monkey off the back.
No, they definitely do. And look, this is a bit of a segue into our multi, but last time they met, Luke Ryan, Sam Walsh and Andrew Brayshaw all touched the footy 30 plus times. So lots to like about there. As you said, it's going to be a midfield battle. So any punters looking to cash in on the disposal markets, take your pick. It might be a bit of a dartboard. Also, this was a pretty big loss for Freo last year. It put a pen through their finals chances, basically. So I think this is going to be a game they've had circled on their calendar since the fixture was released. Let's talk the multi, though.
Oh,
we have to do it. Last week, cashed up. $16.28 winner. First of the year, as I said at the start, probably the best this show's ever had. So I took the Pies to cover on Easter Thursday. Then you came through with the goods on Good Friday. You took the Sheasel 30 plus versus Carlton in the disposals market. Took Melbourne to cover against Port. That was a nervous watch. And then you had the Bont to bring us home to kick 2+ goals against West Coast.
Unbelievable. I was a bit nervous on Sunday when Bont, he had one early and then he was a bit quiet, wasn't finding a lot of the footy and then took to the last quarter and then he went bang, bang. But $16.28, that'd be as big as the NRL show as well. It'd probably the biggest multi over 2 or 3 years, I would say so.
NRL's struggling. So
we're cashed up.
We're one up.
We only need that gives us 15 weeks of free punting.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think the punts will be that forgiving because once we get a couple wrong again, they'll be off us.
Was there a few punters that got on?
There were. I had a look at the stakes. We had one punter had $100 down very early before the games even kicked off, and there was another couple that had 50 or so. So
that's juicy.
We've done them some big favours here, mate. The pressure's also on now.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. So I'm going to kick us off this week. Port Adelaide versus Essendon. I think this is going to be a very tight game. I really like what we're seeing from Essendon's midfield. So I'm going to take either team to win by 24.5 points. Getting $2.05 for that one. You are looking at the game we just spoke about, Carlton versus Fremantle.
Yeah, Carlton versus Freo. As you said, I think it'll be a ball fest. I think Sarong will get a bit of attention, so probably Hewitt will go to him. So I think Brayshaw to have 30 plus. I think he'll be the one that gets off the chain for Freo.
Lots to like there. I'm taking Carlton just outright in that game for all the reasons I just said. I think they're going to win through the midfield. They've got the advantage up forward, so some good value for that one. And then finally, you're going to bring it home with a good old faithful that we had last week.
The old faithful. I'm going back to the well. Yep. Bont to kick 2+ again. It's too good a value, $2.75. I think he must be under a little bit of an injury cloud, so I think he's going to play more inside 50. And we know he hits a scoreboard when he's down there. So I think that's a really good value at $2.75 to kick 2+. Geelong, I'm not sure anyone will be able to go with him when he does go forward. You can do it through the midfield or forward. So I think it's good value.
This is a big stretch for the Dogs too. They've got a tough month coming up. They've looked good in their last couple games, but like St Kilda, another side that's very difficult to trust at times. To recap, so I'm going either team at 24.5 points or less, Port Adelaide versus Essendon. Taking Carlton outright against Freo. You're taking Andrew Brayshaw, 30+ disposals, and the Bont to kick 2+ against Geelong. Rocky, we're getting $16.51 for this one.
The same again.
Very similar, almost identical. So,
look out.
Yeah. You can find this multi in the Ned's special section in the AFL part of the app. Thank you, Rocky. Fingers crossed we can go again, mate.
Good on you, Ryan. Let's double up.